She admitted spending the night at Kayla's. Her phone was off all night long. For hours, I lay on the couch fully clothed, shoes intact, with my phone screen's blue light casting shadows on the living room walls. I neither called nor texted beyond the third unanswered message. I merely waited. It was unusual for her to switch off her phone overnight, an exception she had never made, not even during camping trips, spa days, arguments, or her cousin's death, or when she'd accidentally dropped it in the sink one time, still managing to inform me by using someone else's phone. Yet, last night, she was absent, and I chose not to interfere. The most pitiable aspect of my vigil was not just how long I stayed awake, but what I did during that time. I rummaged through the hallway drawer, moving old cables and expired coupons aside, and retrieved the old iPhone I used to use before upgrading. She wasn't aware I still had it. I activated it, linked it to Wi-Fi, and logged into the Apple ID she had instructed me to create for her earlier. My hands remained steady, but my stomach churned. The password hadn't been altered. No trace on Find My iPhone. She had deactivated it. This was the first clear indication, a decision, a deliberate click that read, "I don't want to be tracked." By the time I heard her key turn in the lock, it was 9:34 a.m. The floor bore long, distinct marks from the entrance. My shirt clung to my body. My jaw ached from the tension it had been holding. Alyssa walked in as if it were an ordinary Sunday morning, seemingly unaware of her prolonged absence of over 12 hours. Her hair was tied in a low bun, sunglasses still on, and she carried a Starbucks cup as if it were a prize. In the kitchen, she opened the refrigerator as if I weren't sitting at the counter and asked, "Why didn't you sleep?" I couldn't respond. Dear friends, if you enjoy this story, please like and subscribe to our channel. It will motivate us to make more videos like this for you. Her hoodie had a faint trace of what looked like lipstick near the hem, not her usual shade. And now, her phone was activated again. "You called me," I eventually said. My voice sounded quiet and rough. My mouth felt stuffed with cotton. She nonchalantly shrugged, took a sip from her coffee, and replied, "Yes, I saw. I forgot my charger. Kayla didn't have the right one." The excuse was so insignificant it didn't even hurt. It made me feel belittled, as if I wasn't even worth a thoughtful lie. Then followed a brief, dismissive chuckle, almost like a cough. She walked past me, playfully ruffling my hair, as if I were an exhausted golden retriever, and said, "You overthink, darling. I'm all right. Go get some rest." "Where were you?" I inquired, neither softly nor loudly, but directly. It felt like breaking glass on tiles. She turned slowly, as if waiting for a punchline. "I told you," she retorted. "It was at Kayla's. Do you think I was out partying or something?" She smiled. A repugnant sight it was, yet not due to Alyssa's appearance. She was always radiant. What disturbed me was the insincere smile that hinted she withheld the truth from me, a choice she had made and accepted either outcome, my acceptance of her lie, or departure. As I rose, Alyssa slightly tensed, more in annoyance than fear, resembling a brief interruption to her playlist. "You weren't at Kayla's," I stated. Her eyes rolled dramatically, almost seeming stuck in the process. "So, detective, are you planning on interrogating Kayla? Checking phone records? What next, Daniel?" However, I had already taken action. Kayla posted an Instagram story last night, 11:47 p.m., showcasing her cat chasing a laser light alone in her apartment. No trace of Alyssa. That green glimmer of betrayal smoldered within me every time I blinked. Yet I remained silent, and Alyssa waited patiently. When she understood I wouldn't yell, accuse, or raise my voice, she grew bored, placed her bag on the couch, and walked towards the bedroom. Her phone buzzed on the counter. It buzzed again and again. I picked it up. This immediately caught her attention. "Keep your hands off my phone," she snapped. 3 missed texts from a contact named Eric Vet appeared on the screen. "We don't have a pet." I looked at her, expecting some sign of concern or unease, but all I saw was amusement. "Are you eager to engage in this charade?" she asked, crossing her arms and smiling tightly. "Do you want to act as a detective? Sift through everything? Pretend like you're not overreacting to a missed call?" I remained silent, giving no response. She didn't wait for one. "Feel free," she said, walking past me again. "Open it. Let's see how deep down the rabbit hole you're willing to dive before you acknowledge your sanity has slipped." Her voice trailed off as she disappeared into the bedroom. However, I didn't open the phone. I didn't need to. Stepped towards the dining table, took the sealed, delivered yesterday morning authenticated documents and put them beside her untouched latte. The phone vibrated again. This time, she didn't chuckle. She gazed at the divorce papers without touching them. Her posture now seemed defensive rather than assertive. "You're exaggerating," she said, her tone subdued, yet not contrite, just weary, but not from guilt, more like frustration with me and the circumstances, as if I had disrupted her day. Spent the night at a friend's. My phone ran out of battery. "Goodness, Daniel, losing chargers happens, it's not illegal." Took a seat opposite her without responding. Words seemed less effective than silence these days. It compelled her to fill the void, and each time she did, the fissures grew larger. "I'm not having an affair," she continued softly, barely meeting my gaze. "This is irrational. You're acting like a lunatic." The last phrase echoed sharply. She was well versed in her actions. She employed this tactic in situations where she felt trapped. It was her means of escape. By making me appear unstable, the conversation veered away from her phone being turned off and towards my response to it. "Do you want to discuss chargers?" I suggested. "Let's delve into Eric Vet instead." She paused for a moment, just a heartbeat or two. "That's Kayla's former partner," she retorted swiftly. "He's a vet. We don't own any pets." It was her intention to adopt a dog, and she had my clinic number on file. "It seems you're scrutinizing my messages now," I nearly chuckled. The lie was premeditated, seamless, suggesting it had been rehearsed beforehand. That name wasn't an oversight. It was a disguise. "Shall we open it?" I queried. She squinted at me. "No, then unlock it." "No, why not?" She rose from her seat with sudden haste, causing the chair to scrape the tile. "Because I don't need to explain my privacy to a manipulative bully. This is absurd." Her tone had transformed, not louder, but more pointed, clear, and filled with malice. She found solace in my pushing her to this point. This was her true comfort zone: anger, resistance, passion. She was adept at flipping the script in a single breath. "You're serving me divorce papers over a name in my phone?" she hissed. "Because my phone died? Are you really going to end 6 years because of that? Grow up!" It was then that I understood something I had been unwilling to acknowledge before. She wasn't trying to prove her innocence to me. She was challenging me to carry out my threat. I stood up, my legs feeling stiff, my hands cold. "It's not just about the name," I said. "It's about the nights when you came home smelling of someone else's cologne. It's about your lies, Alyssa. It's the way you laugh when you lie, as if it bores you, as if it's beneath you. You are paranoid. You are reckless." We stood there for a moment, with only the cold air of a room where love had already perished between us. Then she turned, walked back to the bedroom, and slammed the door behind her. She didn't cry. She didn't plead or inquire about my sincerity. Instead, she placed the documents on the table and vanished. I knew she wouldn't endorse them, not right away, not for fixing things, as that would necessitate guilt, which she didn't feel. She refused to sign because it meant I had the final say, and Alyssa never allowed that. The bedroom door remained shut for hours. I didn't knock, message, or make any noise. The house was a repository of tension. Chairs untouched, her perfume faintly lingering near the entrance, the half-empty smoothie glass still wet on the counter. I scrutinized those divorce documents for a prolonged period. They remained undisturbed, unopened, similar to an unwanted letter from a war zone. At 3:11 p.m., she appeared, freshly bathed, her hair damp, skin radiant, donned in high-waisted jeans and a black tank top, as if going out for brunch rather than treading through a home steeped in betrayal. She no longer appeared angry, only vigilant, as if she were pondering. Her tone was relaxed, even gentle. "So what next? Do you want me to plead? Apologize for something I didn't commit?" I remained silent. I observed her meticulously placing her Apple Watch onto her wrist, as if nothing were amiss. "You seem to believe you're the victim here," she commented, glancing at her reflection in the microwave. "However, the truth is, you've been distant for months. You simply didn't realize I grew distant too." She spoke as if stating a fact, hiding a revelation within justification. And it dawned on me all at once. This wasn't an impulsive act. This wasn't about one night, one man, or one lie. This was decay, gradual and persistent, hidden behind the walls of our marriage. "You didn't simply grow distant," I replied. "You started living a double life." Her lips twisted slightly into a self-satisfied half-smile. "And perhaps that life didn't involve constant suspicion and late-night accusations. That was ironic. She accused me, as if I'd conjured this environment of suspicion without basis, as if I hadn't spent decades trusting her while she doled out fragments of herself on a string. The most infuriating aspect? I murmured softly. It's not that you deceived, it's the scant effort you exhibited, as though you presumed I was too naive or too enamored to discern. She picked up her keys. I need some fresh air. Alyssa? She hesitated at the doorway, fingers on the doorknob. Don't return tonight, she said without looking back. Her grip tightened subtly. Yet she didn't argue, didn't recoil, didn't even glance over her shoulder. She left. I waited until the sound of her car door closing reverberated down the street. Then I seized her laptop. It was still active, unprotected. I clicked on iMessage. There was nothing in the inbox. However, the trash bin was overflowing. Hundreds of deleted conversations, and one name repeatedly appeared. E. I opened one. Last night was chaotic. I can still smell you. You made me feel more alive in 3 hours than 6 years of marriage had ever done. I shut the laptop cover. Not due to excess of information, but because I had seen all there was to see. My gaze fell on the closed device, hands feeling lifeless, heart throbbing with a mournful beat like a funeral dirge. She hadn't bothered encrypting it, nor did she use fingerprint or secondary passwords. She left the door unguarded, possibly because deep within Alyssa didn't mind if I found it, or perhaps she believed I never would. The messages were not casual flirtations. They were a novel, a chronology, a trail of betrayal spanning months. He referred to her as Red, perhaps a secret pet name, and she addressed him simply as E. Whether it was meant to conceal his identity or add intrigue, it sent shivers down my spine. I detest sharing a bed with him after being with you. It feels wrong. He remains oblivious, thinking I'm working late. The mixture of intimacy and contempt was unbearable. I didn't know what was more distressing, the affection or the disdain. Reading her messages left me feeling insignificant, a mere extra in my own life, orbiting around her narrative. I moved restlessly about the kitchen, feeling the urge to roar, to shatter the laptop, to obliterate the digital odor of what I'd just read. Instead, I acted impulsively. I responded to him, a single sentence. You're not as overlooked as she made you seem. I pressed send, closed the app, shut off the Wi-Fi. Then I printed everything, each message, every photo, every calendar entry she'd concealed under spa day, book club, or Kayla's. I organized it all in a manila folder, labeled it evidence, and marked myself no longer as a wounded spouse, but as a man readying for battle. She returned around 7 p.m., silent, without a warning, just the sound of keys in the lock and that tune I once adored. She walked in as if nothing had occurred, humming another annoying pop song I despised. Her sunglasses remained on as the sun had sunk, but when she spotted me at the table with a file in front of me, she halted. I stayed silent, simply pushing the file towards her like a dealer revealing an unlucky hand. She glanced at the label, emitted a quiet snort, and perused its contents. 5 pages later, her expression shifted. After 10 pages, she ceased flipping through it. No tears fell, no anger erupted. Instead, she smiled, a slow, malicious grin that knotted my stomach. "This is what this is all about," she said. I acknowledged it with a nod. "This is the reality, the one you didn't bother to conceal." She leaned against the counter, folding her arms. "You invaded my privacy. You lied when you stopped being faithful." "Faithfulness?" she scoffed. "Do you truly believe you deserve that? For years, you've been emotionally distant, Daniel. I simply moved on. You remained stuck. That's not my fault. You didn't move on. You deceived. You betrayed me." She gazed at the file, then back at me. "So now what? Are you under the impression that revealing this truth transforms you into a hero? Do you imagine people will be moved by your publication of numerous texts?" I responded, "No. I don't concern myself with others' opinions, but I won't continue to be complicit in your deceit." A prolonged silence ensued, tense and awkward. You inquired softly, "So, you just want me gone?" I nodded. You made no attempt to argue or ask for time to prepare. Instead, you entered the bedroom and started packing a suitcase, humming once more, the same annoying tune, as if it were a triumphant melody. I remained seated alone, observing the woman I believed was my spouse transform into a stranger who displayed open delight in her departure. She packed with the air of someone going on holiday. No hesitation, no tears, merely efficient, mechanical movements, organizing socks, folding shirts, glancing at herself in the mirror before adding a compact and a miniature bottle of perfume she rarely used for me. It was surreal, like watching a rehearsed performance that I hadn't been privy to before. I stood in the corridor, resting against the doorway, my arms folded, remaining silent. I desired her to sense the collapse of the bond we'd forged over the years, disintegrating instantaneously. However, she remained unfazed. She fastened her bag, turned towards me, and said, "I'll retrieve the rest later." "No, you won't," I retorted. She raised an eyebrow in amusement. "Are you planning to burn my possessions, Daniel?" "I suggested you pack what you require. I'll ensure the rest is neatly packed and delivered." That seemed to irk her. A hint of a smile flickered on her lips, briefly, like a mask slipping for a moment. She detested relinquishing control. Even at this climactic moment, she sought to dictate the terms of the conclusion. "You're causing unnecessary ugliness," she asserted, moving towards the front door. "No," I countered. "You did. I'm merely tidying up." She paused at the door, turned slowly. The light in the corridor cast a flattering glow on her. I loathed that. She maintained her composure effortlessly while I disintegrated, and she declared, "I never loved him." I remained unmoved. She left that statement suspended in the air, unsure if it was intended to bring solace or strike a blow. "It wasn't necessary," she continued. "The difference is, for you, it was always about fulfilling expectations. He only desired me. You tried to portray what I truly am." Her lips parted as if to spew venom, but she held back. Instead, she smirked, leisurely and derisive, as though I wasn't worth the effort. "I'll message you when I'm prepared for more," she said. I remained silent. The door closed softly, leaving behind quietness. For the first time in a prolonged while, there were no footsteps, no lingering scent, no false laughter reverberating through the kitchen. Only stillness. I neither wept nor shouted. I perched on the bed's edge, gazing at the depression her body made in the pillow, and that became my vessel for grief. A tiny, senseless emptiness. The final vestige of someone I believed I understood. I was unsure of what followed next. Legal matters, documents, selling the property, dismantling decades of us into legal containers. But in that instant, none of it mattered. Since then, I hadn't been trapped in anticipation. I was done. The initial night without her was the softest noise I'd ever heard. For hours, I remained stationary on the couch, motionless. Didn't eat or drink. Didn't flick through my phone. I merely existed amidst the reverberations of a life we constructed, now vacant. The apartment still bore her scent. Each room was haunted by her specter, the partially utilized shampoo in the shower, the mug with her lipstick smudges in the sink, the blanket she consistently pushed off her feet yet stubbornly retained. She was omnipresent, even in her absence. That was the most painful aspect. Close to midnight, I rose, packing her belongings without feeling tired, not out of anger, but a clinical necessity. The house fell silent, only the soft slides of drawers, zippers zipping shut, and snapping plastic bins echoed. I stumbled upon unexpected items, old concert tickets untouched, notes in her handwriting, not love letters, but to-do lists, strangely detached, as if she had been meticulously planning a life she no longer wished to include me in. In the bedside drawer, I found a gold necklace, understated yet valuable, that I'd never seen before. Not a gift from me. A box contained it, with a note inside, every secret night and all the ones to come. Clutching the chain, I felt a strange void in my emotions, replaced by a heavy, queasy sensation in my chest. Placed the container within the folder containing written records. Evidence was now its purpose. No longer were they recollections or emotional scars. Instead, they were documents for legal, emotional, and financial protection. Exhausted, I ended up on the couch at around 4 a.m. The following day, I contacted my lawyer, Jeremy, or a former college mate unaware of the personal nature this was about to assume. "Are you absolutely certain?" he asked upon hearing all details. Never had I been more convinced. We discussed the practicalities: contested divorce, suspected betrayal, no children, joint possessions, apartment lease shared in both names. Jeremy suggested swift action would minimize messiness. However, with Alyssa, nothing ever wrapped up neatly. "She's not one to simply surrender," he cautioned. "I'm aware." That evening, she texted me, "Alyssa, clever move with the messages." Immature but effective. Alyssa, don't think I'll succumb quietly because you caught me being restless. I chose not to reply. That night, I replaced the locks, not due to malice, but out of requirement. This place was no longer hers. It had become a crime scene. I was finished with my role as the patient husband, waiting for my wife to resemble the woman she once was. She wouldn't return. The woman I wedded was already absent long ago. 2 days later, there was a knock. No texts or calls. A real knock at 10:17 p.m. I had been in bed, not sleeping, but lying there, like every night since she departed. The stillness where each second echoes louder than the last. Upon opening the door, I already knew it would be her. Alyssa was standing there, arms folded, wearing that black coat she donned to appear threatening. Her hair was tied back, makeup immaculate, posture straight. A show. "I need my hard drives," she said coldly. "No chance." She scoffed, moving towards me without hesitation. I blocked the entrance. "You're not entering." This halted her. Her lips slightly curved, yet fell short of a genuine smile. "You replaced the locks? This isn't your exclusive domain now. It's as much mine as it is yours. Send your lawyer instead." She gazed past me, seemingly peering into the apartment to find her reflection. Then her eyes returned to me. "Do you genuinely believe yourself to be the wronged party here?" she inquired. "I'm not a victim. I've merely had enough of being your spectator." She nervously traced a lock of hair behind her ear, a habit from old disagreements. "I didn't love him," she repeated. That wasn't the crux of the issue. Then what was? A momentary hesitation flashed across her, as if her body held the answer, but her tongue hesitated to voice it. I moved nearer. "What do you mean? Seen him?" "No." "Significant." Silence. "I gave you devotion," I asserted. "Dedication. Time. Confidence. I constructed a life for you. You didn't merely betray me, but mocked me. You dragged my name through your imagined scenario and chuckled in the process." Her jaw tightened. "Stop pretending to be virtuous. You immersed yourself in work. You no longer looked at me as you used to. That gave you license to destroy everything?" "No," she retorted. But it made it simpler, and that was it. Not regret, not remorse, truth. Bitingly cold, no apology enclosed. I presented her with a cardboard box. "Your hard drives are at the bottom. Your studio equipment is in the wardrobe up front. I left the rest of your belongings in storage. You can retrieve them when I'm not around." She accepted the box without uttering a word, turned to depart, then halted. "You know what the real punchline is," she said, still facing me with her back. "In a month, you'll awaken and discover you miss me. You'll detest it. But you will." I remained silent, not because she was incorrect, but because I knew I wouldn't. She departed down the hall, heels tapping like a metronome that gradually faded into the kind of silence that, for the first time, felt cleansing. The apartment seemed altered following her departure that night, not improved nor deteriorated, merely changed. Akin to a stage post curtain fall, with the performance concluded, spectators vanished, awaiting the introduction of authenticity into the ensuing silence. I found myself stationed at the kitchen counter, nursing an unwanted beer, idly sifting through a pile of mail I'd long neglected. The bulk was trash. One envelope hailed from our rental office, a nudge that the renewal deadline loomed near. A smile crept across my face, not out of intention to extend our stay, but for the first time in months, I had the power to decide whether this dwelling continued to be a part of my life, whether her residual vibrations were allowed to persist within the walls and furnishings, or if I could begin anew. Drained from my drink, my phone hummed. An unknown number. I chose to let it ring repeatedly before yielding to my curiosity. "Hello?" After a brief pause, a man's voice broke through. "Was this Daniel?" he asked. The tone and timbre were familiar, having once heard it faintly in the background of one of her video messages. Chuckling behind one of her girls' night pictures, which I now recognized was deception, I addressed him as Eric. Another silence ensued, suggesting he hadn't anticipated my knowledge of his identity. He began, only for me to interrupt. "I didn't phone to initiate anything." He continued swiftly. "I merely called because she informed me you filed. I thought it would be fair for you to hear it directly from me." "What are you talking about?" I inquired. "That it's finished," he clarified, "between her and me." I remained quiet, allowing the words to linger, detecting his agitation and likely restlessness through the distant background noises of traffic and honking horns, signifying that he was outside. "She didn't inform you?" he inquired. "No," I replied. "We aren't exactly sharing confidences these days." He sighed audibly. "I didn't realize how involved you two were. She said you were roommates, essentially disengaged." I found myself chuckling involuntarily. "She told you we were roommates? That it was merely paperwork? That you'd been emotionally distant for a year?" I almost respected her ingenuity. Her lies weren't just hurtful. They were calculated, tailored to make betrayal feel like intimacy. "Indeed, I informed you she wasn't truthful with you as well." "I understand that now. What do you want from me?" He remained silent for a while. "Merely, I didn't intend to be the phantom that undermined your marriage and vanished," I said, gazing blankly at the wall. "You weren't the phantom," I added. "You were the instrument." That struck harshly. I could sense his silence on the other end. "She manipulated you," I continued, "just as she did with me. The only distinction is that I wedded her." "I apologize," he responded. "You should be." Then I ended the call. No outbursts, no dramatic soliloquies, no resolution. I erased the number. That night, I packed away every picture of her, every wedding snapshot, every framed Polaroid, every anniversary card we once displayed on the refrigerator. I didn't destroy them, didn't shatter them. Instead, I put them in a storage bin and pushed it beneath the bed, not to preserve the past, but to entomb it. The following days came in strange pulses. Tranquil mornings, quiet meals, unfamiliar tranquility. At first, it seemed like liberation. No longer treading cautiously, no longer rehearsing dialogues in my mind to prevent stirring Alyssa's sudden outbursts of disdain. Yet, relief doesn't equate to tranquility. Not yet. The most challenging moments arrived unexpectedly. Strolling past our favorite brunch spot on 4th, where she used to order eggs that remained untouched. Driving by the dog park she once yearned to visit, despite us never owning a dog. Hearing a song she cherished, realizing it played during those nights she asserted were spent at Kayla's. They weren't memories anymore. They were snares. I began therapy. My first session was hazy. I recounted my tale in disjointed fragments, not chronologically, merely in torment. Therapist Maggie listened quietly, taking in the chaos, making no facial expressions, jotting down nothing. She simply listened. When I eventually reached the part about the texts she sent to him, her discussions about me, Maggie leaned forward and inquired, "Do you believe she ever held you in esteem?" The question struck me like a block of concrete. Unawareness made my predicament worse than knowing she had been unfaithful. A few nights later, I encountered her unexpectedly. I was leaving the supermarket, loaded with plastic bags, keys between my teeth, struggling to manage everything. She emerged from the wine shop opposite, holding hands with a new person. Not Eric, not him. This one was taller and bearded, giving the impression he lived in flannel shirts. She recognized me before I saw her. For a brief moment, she hesitated, then smiled broadly, intentionally. She wished for me to witness. I paused, then resumed walking. She didn't call out. Instead, she turned away and leaned into him as if he was her upcoming chapter. Perhaps he was. Maybe he believed she was someone else. Maybe she told him the same thing she told Eric, that I was merely a roommate, a formality, a transient phase. However, it didn't matter anymore. Not after that night. Because while she repeated her script with various actors, I decided to abandon the entire production. That evening, I booked a flight. Quiet locale, unfamiliar surroundings, length of stay undetermined, indifference towards duration. Arrived in Oregon on a chilly, overcast Tuesday, unknown to locals. No acquaintances, no relatives. Only myself, a hired vehicle, and a week reserved at a secluded lakeside cabin boasting poor cell reception and superior tranquility. The aim was solitude. No grand eat, pray, love instance. No spiritual resurrection in the forest. Merely emptiness. For the first time in a while, I ceased justifying myself to the ambiance surrounding me. In that quietude, the haze in my mind started to dissipate. I stopped reciting her deceits repetitively. I stopped questioning what I might have done otherwise or what aspect I'd overlooked, confirming it as my fault. I allowed my anger to surface when required, sharp and swift, then released it just as promptly. I no longer held on to it. The mornings were tranquil and leisurely. I'd rise before sunup, encase myself in a blanket, and sip coffee on the veranda. The tranquil lake resembled an inky abyss, mirroring how serenity isn't always apparent. At times, it takes the form of slow-motion mornings. By the third day, an unusual occurrence transpired. I found myself grinning, without a specific cause. I ventured into the woods, ignoring my phone. I consumed a meal without any urge to prove myself. Resuming journaling, a practice abandoned since college, it was no longer about her. It was about me, my aspirations, my transformation, and my intolerances. One night, while engrossed in a book barely recalled picking up, I contemplated Alyssa without experiencing any emotions. No pain, no animosity, no affection, merely silence. That moment marked the revelation that the divorce was not confined to the served papers, but had occurred emotionally, invisibly, a loss we never recognized. I extended my stay for 2 more days. Upon my return, the apartment was empty and spotless, devoid of her presence. Her fragrance had vanished, and the box containing her belongings remained by the door, untouched. I'd requested she retrieve it while I was away, but she never responded. She chose not to keep the rest, or perhaps unconsciously understood those items no longer belonged to her. I donated most of them, discarded the rest, and destroyed the evidence folder, not in a spirit of forgiveness, but as I had no need for mementos from the ruins. The battle was no longer about winning, it was about departing the battlefield, knowing I had survived. My sister Jenna was the first to notice my change. She visited some weeks after my return from Oregon, bearing beer and tacos without asking questions. Instead, she settled on the floor as we once did in college, scrolling through a home decor site on her iPad. After a while, she looked up and remarked, "You don't seem damaged." I replied with a smile, "Thank you." She leaned against the sofa after Alyssa left, contemplating your possible descent. I had prepared for a dramatic intervention, much like one on Netflix. We both were aware of it. She nodded and fell silent. You loved her deeply. I could not deny that. That love was painfully, overwhelmingly real, the kind that made you overlook warning signs, minimize inner warnings, convincing yourself that self-sacrifice was heroic rather than merely exhausting. Yet she didn't reciprocate my affection, I admitted. Not the way you deserved. We sat in silence for a while. Jenna then posed the question that had been lurking in my mind for days. Do you think she ever truly loved anyone? I couldn't say, as I still don't know, because Alyssa was not one to leave clear traces of her feelings. Her love, if it ever existed, was complex, laced with performance, utility, and control. If she did love, I doubt it resembled what most people call love. That same night, I opened the drawer where I used to store the ring box. It was missing, not stolen. Months ago, I discarded it myself, likely tossing it into a storage box or closet when she began sleeping at the bed's edge and chuckling at my unheard jokes. Yet, in that vacant drawer, I recognized what I had unconsciously clung to. Not her, not our marriage, but the notion of being correct, of demonstrating that I hadn't faltered. I relinquished that as well. I began cleaning, reorganizing, reclaiming. I shifted the bed to the opposite wall, purchased fresh sheets, removed the mirror she had insisted on installing, the one she barely utilized but always admired for its ability to reflect light. I no longer desired her reflection in that space. I enrolled at a local rock climbing gym, not due to a desire to become a rock climber, but because it terrified me, and I needed to engage in activities that were risky or unpredictable, not tailored to someone else's expectations. One evening, while belaying a stranger, he inquired, "Do you climb with your partner?" "No," I responded. "I ascend solitarily," and for the first instance, that didn't conjure a sense of loss. Instead, it stirred feelings of commencement. It has been 7 months since she departed through that doorway. There was no theatrical apology, no tearful reunion, no late-night entreaties seeking another opportunity. Only quietness. She never returned for her remaining possessions, never inquired about the divorce documents, never acknowledged my final message informing her that the lease had been transferred and she was legally disengaged. Somehow, that silence served as the resolution I hadn't realized I required. Friends still wonder what transpired. I merely informed them of at least the pertinent account. She betrayed me. I departed. Life progressed. However, there is an aspect they are unaware of, the aspect following the settling of dust. After the pain ceased being deafening and began to whisper. After one stops searching for justice and begins constructing something superior to revenge, a future. I received a promotion at work, a shock even to myself. My supervisor remarked that I appeared more focused, more resolute. I chuckled when he said it, because he was correct. It's astounding how clear-minded one becomes when not engulfed in endless emotional conflicts. I've been treading cautiously into dating once more, with no preconceived notions, no measures of comparison, merely learning to be attentive, to inquire without suspicion, to chuckle unrestrainedly. A lady asked me about my previous relationship. I disclosed the facts. She lied frequently. However, the most painful aspect wasn't her infidelity. It was how effortlessly she allowed me to suffer without a hint of sympathy. She merely nodded, remained unaffected, and said, "I apologize. You deserve better. That's all." No drama, no pity, just comprehension. For the first time, I wasn't ashamed of my past. Instead, I felt liberated from it. If I could revisit the man I was with that morning when her phone displayed divorce papers, I would tell him this. Yes, it will tear you apart. Yes, it will seem like the life has been sucked out of you, as if laughter, trust, or peaceful sleep would forever be elusive. But you will heal. You will laugh again. You'll learn to trust once more, and you'll find peace. You'll discover that the individual causing you pain isn't a monster with sharp teeth. They're merely fractured in ways beyond your reach for mending. And you aren't weak for harboring affection towards them. You're resilient for moving away from them. Consequently, if you find yourself reading this and resembling someone fixated on a screen, hoping for proof of continued concern, let me be direct. Don't hesitate. Initiate the legal action. Gather your belongings, adjust the locks, discard the files, ascend the path, since nobody will rescue you. However, once you rescue yourself, you'll never revert to the self who accepted less. I guarantee this marks the true ending, the fresh, uncluttered one.